Good evening, everyone. You are listening to Red Pill 78, and I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. I want to thank everyone for joining me. Very, very excited about the program tonight. We've got Justen and Wes Faull from the Fourth Watch Films. I lost my notes for a second there. We're going to be talking about the film Higher Entities, The Lost Tapes, and probably a lot more stuff. These guys are extremely interesting, and they are incredible artists. You guys aren't going to want to miss this. So please do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor. You know, more and more companies are struggling right now, and unfortunately, a casualty of that might be your 401k. We've got American workers finding their retirement money is being frozen and their plans just being canceled altogether. Finding your pension suddenly terminated isn't a great place to be, but it does give you a few options. You can withdraw your funds and get taxed a lot. If your workplace has gone out of business, but you have a new job, you can roll it over to the new employer, but you'll have all of the same risks. Or you can put your money into your own personal IRA account, where it's your right to choose your own investment. With stock markets, property, and bonds looking rocky right now, precious metals, gold and silver might be the way to go. Noble Gold are experts on precious metal IRAs. They've kept thousands of families safe when their futures were pulled from under them. So give them a call at 877-646-5347 or hit the link below to get the free investment guide. Check out noblegoldinvestments.com today and tell them that Red Pill 78 sent you. The information's free, and when you support Noble Gold, you support my channel. All right, guys, and I just want to make sure everyone is aware that there is a brand new way that you can support the channel. YouTube has kindly given me the ability to have people who subscribe to the channels be members. I created a bunch of different levels, and you can see them on the screen right now, and you can also see when people join, you get a little badge next to your name, and you get to use special emojis that I created. There is a baby Yoda in there, one of my favorites. There's also a Melania. There is also a Adam Schiff going freak out. It's pretty cool. So everybody who has joined up so far, thank you very, very much for helping to support us. When YouTube changed the rules to delete anyone that wasn't commercially viable, I really honestly thought I had a lot to worry about. But because they did this, it makes me think that maybe I'm not necessarily on the chopping block. But getting on to the topic of the evening, right here on the screen, you guys can see the Vimeo page for Higher Entities, The Lost Tapes. You guys, this movie blew my mind. This subject right here is a really touchy one, especially in our community, because people have a lot of different thoughts and theories about what's going on. There's clearly some unexplainable things that happen in our world. Some people say they're angels. Some people say they're demons. Some people say they are aliens. I don't know what they are, but all I know is that weird stuff happens and we can't explain it. So please, without further ado, guys, will you welcome my guests for the evening, Justen and Wes. Guys, how are you? Oh, we're still muted. There we go. Sorry about that. You're unmuted now.
Hey, what's up, Red? Thanks for having us on the show. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. Wes, how about yourself, bud?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome.
Been looking forward to this.
I am super excited to have you guys here because I had seen some coverage on your film, and then when we got in touch with each other and I had the opportunity to watch it, it was a really, really bewildering experience, you know? I mean, this particular subject, you know, I mean, it's fraught with a lot of theory and conjecture, but in this case, we're talking about documents from the federal government. We're talking about information that's been declassified and that we can actually point to and prove. So let's start at the beginning here. How did you guys get involved with this particular research?
It goes back about, I would say 3 or 4 years ago. And one of my good friends and co-producers, Chad Riley, who we're going to be talking with later tonight, he had reached out to me to ask if I had ever heard of this shadowy organization called the Collins Elite, or I should say that they were known as the Collins Elite. And of course, at the time, I had only really heard about them in Tom Horn's book, Exo Vaticana, which is getting into the whole Catholic, the Vatican extraterrestrial search, if you want to call it that, getting into the Lucifer telescope and Mount Graham. But I hadn't really heard a whole lot about them other than that. And I heard a little bit about them. We talked about it and just kind of put it on the shelf. And then about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, Darren Geisinger, who wrote the book Zero G's, he reached out to us and we're having dinner and he's talking about the Collins Elite. And I'm like, whoa, the Collins Elite. So we found out that we had a mutual contact with a guy who was met with by Department of Defense agents from a similar organization, very similar to what we have been told about the Collins Elite. So one thing led to another. It was a very shady scenario getting started because certain people were really kind of like hush hush and they didn't want to talk about it. But we, I just say that, we prayed about it. And, we're Christians and we believe that we're entering into a time where the deception is so thick and the schemes, the conspiracies, let's just call it what it is. We're dealing with political conspiracies that are rooted in the spirit world.
Absolutely.
And that's our conviction. And so we prayed about it and we asked that the Lord would guide us, that if this was not the project for us, or if this wasn't even safe for us to get involved with. Because as we're going to talk about tonight, someone involved in this project, a family member, he got murdered.
Wow.
For talking about some of this.
Well, I think this is an excellent time for you guys to tell us exactly who are the Collins Elite and what was it that they were doing?
The story goes back into the 40s. And anybody listening or watching this video, they can go and they can look into this. They can find out about this ritual that was started by Aleistar Crowley, who is a just internationally known occultist. And Aleistar Crowley was very well known for influencing like the Beatles and the Doors and a lot of Led Zeppelin, a lot of the rock groups of the the 60s and 70s. But Aleistar Crowley had created this ritual called the Alamantra working. And he did this ritual back in 1919, I believe it was. Interestingly, that date correlates with the Vril Society in Nazi Germany. But don't want to go into too many tangents. I'm bad at this. Aleistar Crowley, he creates this crazy satanic blood, sex, magic ritual, and he performs it successfully in 1919. That ritual got kind of reworked by this famous American rocket scientist that we know as Zak Parsons, who is now becoming a household name because of TV shows, documentaries on the History Channel. He's even there's a primetime drama called Strange Angel on I think it's CBS All Access.
When I saw that, my wig flipped. I could not believe that they were making a show about that, because it's stuff normally that they would not even want to touch with a 10-foot pole, but here they are glorifying it.
Let me take it a step further. The stuff they showed in that show is enough for you to get your YouTube channel removed. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you wanted to comment on Strange Angel?
I was just going to say they normalize it by putting it in the form of a narrative.
Yeah.
So by doing that, it desensitizes people. It puts some. It makes people want to participate.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. They're like
they
sex,
show the
power,
glamour.
money.
Sure, that sells.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Zak Parsons, there's so much information out there. It's not hard to learn about him. Without Zak Parsons, the American military complex would not have the rocket technology that we have today.
Right.
I mean, he is a god in their world.
Now, did he was involved with the start of JPL, correct?
Yes, and people will even argue that JPL really stood for Zak Parsons Laboratories, even though on paper it's Jet Propulsion. Now, Zak Parsons was a very educated man, but not educated by books and by academia. He is not someone that earned the letter on paper. This is a guy who received his information through satanic rituals and channeling. So what he's doing is he's communicating, he's reaching out into the spirit world with rituals, and he's doing research on how to do this. And he is led to the writings of Aleistar Crowley. Now, Crowley was alive at the time. That's important to note. He sees this ritual, the Alamantra working, and he decides he's going to rework it, and he's going to kind of tweak it a little bit, and he creates what's known as the Babylon working ritual. He does this with L. Ron Hubbard, who was a science fiction writer and the founder of Scientology.
Yeah.
We don't even have time to delve into Scientology tonight. but that's a crack pipe waiting to happen.
It's a whole nother show.
I mean, really, they say Tom Cruise is the enforcer. Like, if people like misbehave, Tom Cruise is said to beat them up in closed rooms. Maybe we can talk about that on another episode. But anyway, I love that we can laugh, man, because this is some really dark stuff. Yeah. And it's good to take a little comic relief in there. But no, in all seriousness, Jack Parsons, he wanted to take this ritual and he wanted to rework it with L. Ron Hubbard. And they were, their goal was to rip a portal open in space time and to bring through what they were calling, the Whore of Babylon. A term that gets misused constantly from the book of Revelation in the Bible. And so they did this for a couple years, and it involved sex and magic. And in doing this, the idea was to have a woman and be impregnated by the spirit. So she's not just going to give birth to a human being, but it's going to have a different spirit in it that they've called in from this other world.
Okay.
And Jack Parsons wrote about this. He's got a book called The Book of the Antichrist or the Antichrist Manifesto, depends on which version you find. And he talked about this, and he said that, yes, we were finally successful. Now, listen, this is a guy who believed in the scientific method. This is not some guy who's just playing around with a magic set. This guy is literally a scientist, a career scientist. He was a hustler, too. They really showed that aspect of his life of him hustling really hard to try to get where he could do his work and get it in the right hands. He loved what he was doing. He says we were successful and we brought about the Whore of Babylon. And I think your listeners are going to love this if they haven't already heard you mention this before. But a year later, Hillary Clinton's born. Now, let's not get into that just yet. No, like seriously, like that's a whole nother discussion because we've done like tons of research on this. The spirit that they claim came to them in the ritual was referring to itself as Hilarion, which is an ascended master in the New Age movement, Hilarion. Anyway, Hillary Clinton's born a year later in close proximity with all of this. And they said that this woman was not going to be the Antichrist, but that this moonchild, they called it a moonchild, that this moonchild was not going to be the Antichrist, but it was going to play a significant role in heralding the political and religious side of things, the deception to bring about the final Antichrist.
The 16-year plan.
It's the long game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back to Babylon working. As soon as they opened this portal, according to their own literature and what they said, all of this crazy paranormal activity began to take place all over the place, not just in California, but spiked in California. People were seeing shadow creatures. There was UFO activity. People were being visited by what they were describing as like little grays in their bed. I mean, just crazy things were taking place. And so the FBI is like ringing off the hook. If you can imagine, like nowadays, everybody contacts the FBI with every little, hunch, but they throw away most of them. But
right.
They could not turn a blind eye to this. The FBI said something is going on. We're getting like unlimited phone call. I mean, we can't even keep track of all these phone calls and letters.
They're blasting the switchboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what they do is they say, we have to enter into this conversation. We've got to give an answer. So in order to do that, they bring funds together. They create a group, and a group that doesn't really exist on paper, but the group was set out to get answers. And they went to Jack Parsons and they said, Jack Parsons, we know you've been working on some things. We're not shy to what you've been doing. Are you responsible for all of this? Now, he has nothing to fear. The guy's already got to go. I mean, his meal ticket's already been punched. He's a hero in the American government, no matter what he does at this point.
Yeah.
He says, yes.
He said yes.
He says, I think this was us.
And how did he feel about that?
You're dealing with a guy who had joined a religion called Thelema. Right. Thelema was all about sex magic rituals and empowering yourself as a god. And so I think he probably felt pretty arrogant about it. I was just
going to add to that. We see that with Aleistar Crowley's workings, there was a creature called the Lamb. I'm sure some of your listeners, viewers are familiar with that. It looked just like what the Greys are described as today.
Yeah. So
and another one was Ayahuasca, was another entity that appeared to Crowley. So we see that it works. And then with Jack Parsons admitting, taking credit for these things, the biggest thing that I want to point out, and Justen was mentioning some of this, but after the ritual took place in the late 40s with L. Ron Hubbard and the Babylon working, you had the Roswell incident. you had Kenneth Arnold sightings, and then you had in 53 the swarm and a Luftwaffe formation of UFOs that swarmed the the White House.
Yeah.
So something took place, and Parsons took credit for it.
But let's not forget, this was not just isolated events in America. After this all happened, you had an influx of UFO activity even over Israel. And I mean, this is all documented. Like, you just can't make this up. You had what people were calling the Battle of Los Angeles. I mean, where there was something going on, where the government was doing something, fighting with something in the sky. And I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And so, of course, the FBI gets involved. And so this is the important part to note. The FBI says, we're going to get answers. They talk to Parsons. They realize, yes, Parsons actually did, in fact, open up some type of a demonic portal. And
this is the government saying this.
Yes. Now, let me just interject something real fast here. There's so much stuff, I mean, this is crazy material, and it's hard to get it out without tangenting just a little bit, because you really have to build a case sometimes to understand what happened.
That's fine. Okay.
So there is a government document that we talk about, and it's called 6751. Okay. Government document 6751. It's an FBI document that was classified for a number of years. It's now declassified. And Chad Riley is the one who found this document before we even started this project. And so the timing could not have been any better. This document is from the 40s. And what happened was a prominent member of academia had written this document and submitted it to the FBI. And it was letting the FBI know that, we have been researching and practicing these things, and we're not dealing with space aliens. There is no such thing as space aliens. What we are dealing with are interdimensional beings.
That's huge.
Yes.
This is the 40s. Okay. This is like, these are things we're just now starting to understand. People don't even accept it today. People are still thinking this sounds out there. You start talking about these beings from another dimension. But in the 40s, this was in an FBI document, and he claimed that they got this information, through their own practices. So they were communicating, they were making contact.
Now,
so the FBI,
real quick, before you continue, were they practicing what they thought was like white magic, or were they also like I mean, I don't really think there's a difference. I mean, it's going to be bad either way. But did they think that they were on the side of good and right with the practices that they were putting into play?
When you're dealing with some of these members of academia, I don't necessarily think it's a matter of viewing it as magic. And I can't really speak for this man because I don't know him. Mm-hmm. But what I would assume, and again, I this is just my opinion, is that probably what happened was they started reaching out with some technology and not realizing that they were going to make contact with something, but just, playing out some hypotheses, right?
As scientists do.
And then something happens that's not expected. And then boom, all of a sudden you're now in contact with some type of an entity who's going to play you like a fool. So that's what I think happened.
I think it was more of an ends justify the means type deal.
Okay.
They were in the search for technology. They saw that what Jack Parsons did succeeded.
Well, we're talking about the guy who wrote the document from the university.
Okay, sorry, I thought.
But we're going to get there, though. I know what you're saying, Wes.
Gotcha.
So basically, he writes this document, and he says that we've gotten this information through supernatural. Back in the 40s, there was a term. I think I said this on SGT Report. What we call supernatural or paranormal today, in the 40s, they called it supernormal.
Okay.
And so the document, is basically saying that we found this information through supernormal means. Well, the FBI guy who received it first, he says, well, this is all fine and great and all, but the information came through supernormal means, so we probably can't really trust it. We're just going to write it off as no big deal. Now, that's fine and everything, but if that's really no big deal, why did they immediately turn it around, classify it under lock and key, and then forward it to all of these prominent high-up security clearances that, I mean, if it's no big deal, why are you classifying it and locking it up for years and then building all of this crazy research around it? Yes. That's what they do. They lie to you. They lie to us. And okay, I don't want to get all fired up. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
This is the MO of the United States government. This is supposed to be a republic, and to the republic for which it stands. But now we're all brainwashed to believe that this is a democracy. And I don't want to go political because that's not what I'm on here to do. But this is the problem, is that the government has gotten to this point to where it's all about feeding the monster. And so that's what happened here. They create a cover story for this document so that nobody else wants to look into it except for this elite group of federal agents. Now, This document can be obtained by anybody watching this video at the FBI Vault material. You can go and download all these documents from the FBI, and you can read it for yourself. Now, interestingly, there's a couple words used in this document that go right back to theosophy. Madame Blavatsky. This is getting into, Manly P. Hall. This is getting into extreme occult sciences, the root races. But regardless, the idea was the government now had this information and they believed it and they classified it and began to build off of it. So now that they have all this information together and they're finding out that Zak Parsons is responsible for this rift, they now try to figure out, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to respond?
Capitalize on it.
This is where things get really crazy. And this is all answering your initial question. Who are the Collins elite?
I love it. I love it.
So what happened here now is you've got this bigger group that's working together as a team, and they don't exist on paper. This is very important. And they realize now that this was obtained through magic. This was obtained through, satanic ritual, according to Zak Parsons. He's the only one that can close it because he opened it. That's the belief in the occult world. And I also want to go on record to say that we are not promoting any type of new age Gnosticism. All we're doing is explaining some very dark parts of history that have been covered up that make a lot of sense right now because they're leading us into where we are today with the deep state and everything else. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So this group says, now we know how he did this. He was using satanic rituals. They now want to find out, well, how could this benefit us?
How can we be a part of this?
Yeah, how can we get paid? You know what I'm saying? Like,
since Zak Parsons already tore open a hole in space and time, we might as well see what we can get out of it.
I mean, he's not going to close it, so we might as well have cake and ice cream too,
Yeah.
And it's funny how it all worked out because they began to use the same methods of satanic rituals. And this is a government group. This is a non-existent federal government group who is now trying to contact these things. I mean, you just cannot make up that. Man, the truth is stranger than fiction, Red.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, I'm trying to make a long story short here.
No, you don't have to make it short. We've got 2 hours.
Yeah, but we got a lot to talk about. So anyway, so they began to engage in occult rituals very much out of the playbook of Aleistar Crowley and Zak Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. And in doing that, there was a small faction that rises up. Now, I can't say that these guys were Christians, but they had what's called the Christian worldview. They had a Christian perspective on a morality.
This is the Collins elite?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, they were not called the Collins elite because of the family. A lot of people want to falsely judge and say, oh, they must have come out of that one of the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, and it has nothing to do with any of that. Okay. Totally separate Collins. This is more so based on a location where something happened. So
okay.
And again, there's very little information. That's why when we set out to do this, we didn't want to just hit on the Collins elite. We wanted to find out if there's other things happening to validate the Collins elite. See what I'm saying?
Connect the dots.
Trying to find. Yeah, you got to find out, because if it's an isolated event, then we can't even prove 100% that it was in this case. But we wanted to step out and find other people, other events, other stories in federal government that line up just like this. So the Collins elite, this little group, they raise up and they say, this is not really feeling wholesome. This doesn't seem like something we should be doing. We should not be doing any type of satanic rituals. And let me remind everybody, back in the 40s and the 50s, before the sexual revolution took place, before before Aleistar Crowley's magic really infiltrated through Led Zeppelin and the Doors and these other groups that really permeated society. Before any of that took place, we were kind of considered a Christian nation. Now, we really weren't a Christian nation. I don't want to get into all that today. We can do another show on the untold history of America, because we've got information that it will blow people's minds. Okay. But for the sake of the argument for tonight, in the 40s or the 50s, it was very common to believe that, we're living in a Christian culture. This is a Christian nation. The 10 Commandments are up here and there. And, it was very common for people to go to church back then. Mm-hmm. The culture is not the same anymore. But a group rising up in the government to say we should not be doing satanic rituals, that you guys really should not be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this. They were just standing up for the worldview that they thought was good. Now, whether they were really Christians or whether, I don't know what they were. I think their theology was a little off, because their solution, they believed that we were going to be inviting in all these crazy entities through the portals, and it was going to get worse and worse progressively, and that the only way to save America, this was their words, not mine, the only way we're going to save America is to create a forced theocracy, forcing everyone back up under the law of Moses. I mean, that's not even a Christian idea.
No.
So you got to wonder where they're getting their information from.
Yeah. Wow.
But they did know well enough to see the things that they were witnessing. It doesn't line up with they had convictions about it, and they didn't want to be a part about it, be a part of it. That's why that's why they formed, their counterpoint group within different governmental organizations.
They sound like, a kind of a black budget think tank, just tasked with figuring out what's going to happen, what we can expect. So what types of changes did they suggest that we implement here in America as part of that forced theocracy?
Well, the idea of legislating the law of Moses, that's a pretty large feat for anyone to even try to attempt. Basically, the idea was if we could turn America into a mirrored image of ancient Israel, to where it was one people under God, and they had to just kind of go through this legal system to be, that was kind of the mentality of legal. I don't want to use the word legalizing, but legislating. Like I said, it's a legislation of the law of Moses, and they thought that was going to create a forced obedience to God, I guess. And in doing that, if America was going to allow that to happen, this forced legislation, then we would be protected, because it would be like God would be the God of America, and they would not allow all of this. God would not allow, and his army of angels would not allow these entities to take over.
Okay.
So and again, there's going to be a little degree of speculation on what was going through their heads.
Right.
But, we're dealing with what's called a limited access program. So you have the big group. The big group is the limited access program, or the LAP.
Mm-hmm.
In a limited access program, like, no one in Congress has to know, not even one person. And so that gives you what's called a it doesn't exist. It's non-existent. Nobody knows about it. It may be one person outside the group, but there's no rules. But with all these other groups, when you're studying security clearances and you're studying the different groups and the classifications of the federal government, there's generally checks and balances. At least one or two people in Congress have to be privy to certain things. Mm-hmm. That's the whole purpose of checks and balances in our government, is so that not one group can't get really powerful. And
right.
So that was the idea, was to create this secret group. Nobody knew about it, but some of the members were talking, and they were running a very heavy risk here, and that is to be accused of mutiny, because you're dealing with this group, a small group that doesn't want to go along with the big program anymore. The majority is rolling here. The majority says this is working. We can do better. We can get more, and that's going to come back later on in another group we're going to talk about here tonight. But it's a we can do better mentality. We can achieve more. I liken it to these movies that we watch, like the gangster movies, or the movies about drug dealers or kingpins. They start off nicking and diming a little bit of dope on the corner. And then before the movie's over, like, their lust for things of this world gets so great that, like, they become a kingpin. And it's like, look, they could have just quit. They could have just cashed in their chips and been wealthy forever. But no, they were selfish. They wanted more. They said, we can do better. And it was the greed, it was the pride of life that causes people to want more and more and more and more. And all they had to do was just leave well enough alone. They could have left well enough alone, and everybody could have gone home happy. But instead, they kept pushing and pushing and pushing, wanting more power. That's that's very typical of any government agency.
And now, when you say this, do you mean power derived from this rift in our dimension by Zak Parsons? I mean, what were they doing? What were they doing actively with this thing?
Yeah, that's the whole purpose. What it turned into over the years, and what we found out, is that there's been multiple incursions, if you want to call it an incursion, of these types of activities. You have people that are seeking the latest and the greatest technology for defense. Mm-hmm. That's one of the big things that we see showing up, is that this has major, there's major possibilities to use this technology with defense and with the Army and the military industrial complex. Like, that's the biggest application of this information, is technology for defense.
Right. I mean, I can think of tremendous application for it. I mean, if they had the ability to teleport, or just to maybe go back in time and then and kill your enemies, or if they could harvest the energy from something like this or communicate with beings on the other side. Was there anything that, that hinted that maybe they were doing that? Maybe there were, exchange of technology. That's one thing that you often hear when people theorize about the possibility of communicating with an alien race, or in this case, an interdimensional or demonic race.
Yeah. Oh, you go ahead.
Stan Deo talks about getting information on anti-gravity craft for one. That kind of makes sense with all the UFO sightings and whatnot. But one of the other ones you mentioned was the capability of being able to walk through walls without breaking yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things that we can that sounds very sci-fi and way out there, but this is, this is the exchange. They gave them places, deep underground military bases to work in. And in exchange, we got technology to work for our defenses.
You want to know some of the specifics, though, some of the specific technologies? And
walk me through it.
Some of the practices, Darren Geisinger, he is a fantastic researcher, and he wrote this book called Zero G's, and it's a fictional novel. So anybody who loves science fiction, it's a science fiction novel, but it's based on like pure unadulterated research, like real. It's like all factual information.
Great read.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's a killer book for anybody that's into sci-fi and horror and stuff like that. But Darren Geisinger, he's been doing research. He's been on the trail of the Collins Elite for years, and he never talks about it because it's one of those topics. It's a very hush-hush topic. But Darren breaks down his research in the film, and he explained that they were practicing with these technologies they were getting. And the technologies, they were trying to take what they were given, and they were trying to master them so that they had the basic technology for like ESP. You're dealing with like extrasensory perception, psychic abilities, the ability to focus your energy on someone and to kill them.
Remote viewing.
Yeah, remote viewing, which by the way, the federal government, we have over 300 declassified documents that we downloaded from the FBI vault, all pertaining to ESP, UFOs, aliens, and demonic extra-dimensional behavior. All of this from the FBI, over 300 documents, and that's not even scratching the surface. There's so many more out there. We just not enough time in a day. So we got over 300 documents, and in there we have the programs listed out that the federal government was working with all of these things, especially remote viewing. The federal government has been working on remote viewing for years. Matter of fact, the first time I heard about it, you told me about it years ago, about quantum jumping and all this other, just stuff that's so weird. It's like, what is this? Like, this doesn't even sound like a reality, yet the federal government is declassifying documents telling you, oh, by the way, we're teleporting people. I mean, what?
Wow. I've heard quite a bit about remote viewing, but never specifically about successful teleportation. That's really interesting.
A lot of the stuff that we hear about is theory, and then by the time it gets declassified, you find out that they actually had working projects.
Right.
And so, I'm the kind of guy, I don't jump on necessarily the first thing I hear. I want to see if I can, I want to look into what the federal government is releasing in their research.
Yes.
Because oftentimes they make it available for the public if anybody cares. It's kind of like with NASA. We know NASA lies about all kinds of stuff, but I remember years ago, I think around 2014 or 2015, NASA released a document about they've located portals now in outer space, like portals that would allow people, like, this is going to sound so crazy.
Like a wormhole?
It would be like a wormhole. And now some people have this view that anywhere there's a portal, it's basically an opening into another dimension. And so it makes sense. It does make sense. But when you consider that, I think Chuck Missler, the Christian scientist, worked for the Department of Defense, and just he's passed away now. But I believe back when he was alive, he was talking about they believe there's up to 14 dimensions, maybe even more than that they can measure.
Yes.
I think they can measure, like, at least at the time they could measure at least 10.
Yeah, 10 or 11 is what I know about.
But he was saying there's possibility of 14 or more. They just couldn't measure them yet. They were in theory. But when you think about all these different dimensions that they can actually measure, and then NASA says, oh, by the way, we've got technology that can ping where these things are. And think about it like this. If NASA says that these things are opening and closing on their own. Now, whether there's any truth to that or not, I don't. And look, people have different beliefs about outer space, and that's totally cool. I personally believe that and when I talk about space, I'm talking about like up in the sky.
Sure.
I'm talking about up in the sky, inside of the enclosure that God made for us. I call it space. People don't like that, but it is. It's space. It's up there, and NASA says there's portals up there. Whether they're lying or not, I don't know. But they say they're monitoring the opening and closing. and they're doing math around it. They're creating formulas so that they can calculate when and where they're going to open. Now, why would NASA want to be where a portal is going to open? A same kind of portal that Zak Parsons opened to bring over the spirits. Why would NASA want to have control over these portals if they even exist?
I can think of tremendous applications for them. You know, I mean, I would imagine they'd want to be there, maybe to send people into them to try and track things coming out. Was there any information that you guys found that confirmed that they had made contact with any specific entities through that portal that Zak Parsons opened, or any others?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you want to go, or you want to take this? Okay, so let me just fast forward a little bit. We need to fast forward a little bit on the timeline, because let's just set the Collins Elite on the side, because this is all related.
Okay.
Moving forward, we wanted to find out if there was other scenarios, other people we could trust who have had boots on the ground, or a family member that worked with the program. And so, we reached out to Stan Deyo, and there's two people that we talked to that actually were involved to some degree. Stan Deyo, just so people know, he might say some things that seem a little out there, but Stan Deyo, years ago, a good friend of ours who's in the film, Tom Horn, he talks about having this newspaper article, like a full-page newspaper article, and it had Stan Deyo on the cover, like a front-page printout, and he's with a bunch of elite scientists. And this was in the UK. And it was a UK paper, and it was talking about these men were like working on breakthrough reverse engineering of anti-gravity craft. Whole new technology that they were finally starting to understand. And he was one of the masterminds, one of the scientists, engineers that was working on this on an international stage. So that right off the bat gives some credence that this guy really was where he says he was.
Okay.
He's in America. He gets pulled into a special project. He's a secret agent now with the FBI. They take him over. He's working with the American government, the UK, and with Australia. It's a joint task force, and they're working inside of these deep underground military bases in Australia. Now, what's really fascinating about this is that these are the same three countries that were working together for Operation High Jump when Admiral Byrd took a fleet down to Antarctica, and they got into what we believe to be a UFO battle after World War II had ended. That's another discussion. That's actually getting into our other film, Hollow Earth Chronicles. We could talk about that on another day. But it's crazy because it all connects. It all connects, man. And so the same three governments are working together in Antarctica to try to get this, they're trying to take over whatever it was that the Nazis were doing in Antarctica. And they got their butts kicked and they came back early. But now the same three governments, Red, they're at it again. They're at it again. And they're working with, alien craft, and they're working in these bases. So Stan Deyo tells us that his colleagues are working in a different facility, like the same facility, but it's like a different part. It's a different partition of the facility with entities. And he's saying that the entities that they were working with in Australia, he says if their skin were to hit the light, like if you could see them in the daylight, that their skin would carry like a patina, like an oil slick, like a rainbow oil slick.
Oh, wow.
Just like exotic snakes.
Or you know what else it reminds me of? There was, I can't remember his name, but when he was in high school, he was contracted by the U.S. military to work supposedly on some crashed vehicle that they were trying to get to work. But the skin of the craft had that oily sheen to it as well, and it was a symbiotic engine. Like you had to have a person in it, you would put your hand in it, and then it would like mind meld with you, and that's how we got it to work. So that's crazy. That's crazy.
No, what's wild is that what you're saying right there, not only does that line up with the description of the skin of these entities, but that story is very closely linked with what Werner von Braun said. He was the Nazi scientist that came over. A lot of people don't know this, but our government brought over a ton of Nazis after World War II and Operation Paperclip, Project Paperclip. And in doing that, they just forgave them of their Nazi war crimes, and they set them up as our scientists and our doctors. And it was right after that I said this on the Alex Jones show, and man, like people were writing me like, this is crazy. Like what? Like they're like, what? This is insane. The pharmaceutical industry was actually a Nazi invention. Yeah. That got booming over here. It's crazy, man. Like as soon as we bring over all these Nazi scientists and doctors, all of this stuff starts booming. NASA, our technology, pharmaceuticals, like people can now go just take some, they can go take some drug that is not even related to nature. You know, it's no longer natural medicine like it was previously. It's now synthetic, made in a lab.
Stan also, he verified the little grays that everybody, talks about. He also mentioned some, about 10 foot tall. So some taller gray aliens, quote unquote. And then also the ones that he was speaking of that Justen was mentioning with the oil slick skin.
But we don't ever hear about we never hear about tall grays. Mostly people just talk about little grays. But yeah, Stan's talking about tall grays. Like, whoa, what is this?
Right. He did tell us another story in the film about when he was visiting the UN, and I forgot exactly what he was doing there, but it was something about an economic forum or something. And there were these two people that were a little bit taller than average, and he compared them to like what we would think of as the Nordics that you hear of. And he said that he felt like a bird in a cage. Like he felt like they were trying to get at him. He did also say that he didn't see them out in the sunlight, so he couldn't verify, one way or another. But he said that was where he was landing.
Wow. But the guy, he had direct. His team was working directly with entities, and he thanks God that he didn't get forced into those rooms to work with those entities. But he was well aware of what was going on, and he also said that once he was in the program, he said that he was aware that our government had made a deal. The American government had made at least one deal with entities. And he said that he believed that it was the Eisenhower deal. Now, I don't know if it's a good time to move into the Eisenhower deal. I'm just trying to kind of keep things on a timeline here to where they'll make the most sense.
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry, I had to let my dogs in.
No, it's cool. So Stan Deyo, when I talked to him about the Eisenhower deal, he knew exactly what it was, and he said he would have been a child at the time. What kind of dogs you got, by the way? Sorry, I love dogs, man. Like, I want to see.
This is Cheeto. He's a Chihuahua.
Awesome.
And then I've also got she's like a miniature beagle. I think she's actually a bagel hound. My daughter found, so she looks like a full-bodied beagle with like a tiny head and like long ears, and then her legs are like little people legs. And so she's like a full-size dog except for the legs and the head. And if you look up a bagel hound on the internet, then you will see a dog that looks exactly like Muffin. Muffin is her name.
Oh, we love dogs, man. We're dog people.
Yes, I am too. They're great.
Man, you know what? If anybody doesn't like us taking a dog break, I'm sorry, but it was worth it.
That's what you gotta do sometimes, I gotta turn my camera off though, because I have to move the curtain. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You guys will just see the walls in my office if I don't.
That's good. No, that's totally cool, man. Yeah. So Stan Deyo, I asked him about the Eisenhower deal. I said, we've been finding different stories about what allegedly happened with President Eisenhower, and we know that his granddaughter is a major spokesperson. Big in the New Age movement. Like
yes.
The idea of like New Age stuff, things getting into like the Age of Aquarius and aliens, and pretty much everything that goes against my personal faith in Christ. But I still like to investigate. We have to investigate these things. And listen, you have to be a weak-minded Christian if you can't be open-minded enough and strong enough in your faith to research outside of just your Bible.
Right.
You have to be able to make educated decisions on the Bible. Doesn't cover every little detail of every little thing. And so with everything going on, we have to use biblical principles, the principles that we have from God's word to understand what's going on. And so we investigate the New Age in a lot of our stuff. And she's running around telling people, oh, yeah, Granddad definitely worked with entities. He had an agreement, a treaty with the entities. And she is a major proponent of this idea. She says that their family believed it.
Now, how does she characterize them? Does she characterize them as interdimensional beings, or does she just see them as space aliens?
I don't follow her work too deeply, but from what I've read, she is in favor of all this. Like she doesn't. It sounds like she's buying into what we call the alien deception,
or ancient astronaut, maybe. Yeah,
or ancient astronaut theory. I don't give her much time because I know that our theology isn't going to line up.
Right.
But I have looked into what she said. She's validating that that Paw was doing these things.
Yeah, because even outside of Laura Eisenhower, I've heard that her grandfather had made some type of a deal. Wasn't there like a period of time that he went missing? Like he was gone for like 2 days or something like that, and met with them on a base out in Nevada.
This is crazy. So there's actually 2 separate events, and they were 1 year apart. And it's so easy to get these mixed up. Matter of fact, I had a slip of the tongue on a radio show we did a couple weeks ago. I'm glad that Chad caught it. But the initial meeting was where he disappeared. That happened at the Edwards Air Force Base.
Okay.
Now this was a secret meeting. There was not eyewitnesses like there was at the other one, but it was a secret meeting, and it's like a media blackout. That's where like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama couldn't be found when they were at the Bilderberg meeting. Remember the whole?
Yes, I remember that.
Everyone's freaking out, and I'm thinking, hey, it's actually a good thing. I don't want to see their faces. but no, that's called the media blackout, where a president is unaccounted for, or a very important person is unaccounted for, someone who requires security. And so Eisenhower disappears, and they come back later and say, oh, well, he had to have an emergency dental visit. You know, he had to get some dental work done, which, okay, whatever. Fast forward a year later, 1955, we're now dealing with the Holloman incident, which is the Holloman Air Force Base.
Right.
This is something totally different. This is now loaded down with eyewitnesses. Like, you've got people, I mean, it's an Air Force base. Everyone's working. It's their day job. It's what they got to do. And people witness Eisenhower coming up, and then you've got these craft that were coming down and landing, and he meets with, there's a couple different stories, but generally he's meeting with at least one or a few of these entities. Now, here's where the story gets really wild. We do a whole segment on the road as we're driving to meet up with Ray Boucher. We set up our cameras in the car, and we had a little discussion on the road. And it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it's so organic and raw. And this is just like us, the researchers, having a heart-to-heart talk on the road. Like, there's no script, there's no questions. It's just like raw. And I'm talking with Darren about this. And Darren and I really hadn't talked about this too much previously, but he had heard a slightly different story. He had heard that initially the gray aliens met with Eisenhower, and they told him, we need to make a deal. We're going to give you X, Y, and Z, and this is what you're going to do for us. Well, then here come these tall whites, these Nordics. They enter the picture at a later time. They try to warn Eisenhower, you can't trust the gray aliens. These are the bad entities. We're the good ones. If you enter into covenant with them, you're going to suffer. Like, it's going to come back to bite you. So we're now dealing with this long game of the entities. Now, anybody with a Christian worldview could look at this and say, this is all part of the Great Deception. It's the good cop, bad cop, but they're still the cops. And so the good alien, the bad alien, they're playing this long game to where they can build a narrative that there's good guys that are going to be our saviors, and then there's bad guys that are going to be the demons. That's pretty much what got sparked back in the 50s. And it all made so much sense. It was like a light bulb went off in my head when Darren said that. I was like, this makes more sense than the original story I heard. And that's the problem, is that the story gets told around the circle. By the time it gets to you from this guy, other people are forgetting things, or they're adding things. And so it was really great to be able to compare a little bit about what Eisenhower's granddaughter was saying, a little bit with what Darren had found. But here's the great part. Chad Riley again, man. Chad Riley, man, we love Chad Riley.
For the win.
Yeah, we do.
Seriously, like, man, if every team had a Chad Riley, like, dude, this guy finds the Easter eggs that nobody knows where to get. I mean, he is always coming with the best. Yeah, seriously, he's probably laughing right now. Like, Chad Riley he's laughing probably right now. But here's the deal. Chad Riley, man, bless his heart. He found some old VHS footage from the 90s.
Okay.
Now, it might have been before that even.
No, I think he said it was early 90s. Well, we can ask him when he comes on in a little while. He found this old VHS tape. I mean, like old, like crappy camcorder, like in a room with a curtain. And these were like the disclosure. Like, these guys were given disclosure of their eyewitnesses from that day at Holloman Air Force.
Oh, wow.
Personal testimony.
Yeah, like there's crazy stuff out there about this. And so Chad, he's digging in. And we love that Chad gets to vet a lot of the stuff that's coming in because, we're researchers too, but you can only cover so much in a day. Not to mention all the work it takes to make a documentary film. You have to be able to vet the information. Anyway, so the Eisenhower deal, we also found out from our other Department of Defense contactee, that's what we're going to call him right now. He confirmed the Eisenhower deal, that it was a real deal and it really happened, and that our government entered into covenant with a group of entities.
And that's the Treaty of Grenada?
Some people call it that, yes. Mm-hmm. Now, what we don't know is the fullness of how it all went down with this group of entities and that group of entities. I mean, to be a fly on the wall in that scenario, I really wouldn't want to be a fly on the wall, because once you see these things, you can't unsee them.
Yeah.
And I personally don't want to see them. I've had enough demonic encounters with demon-possessed people and just crazy paranormal stuff in my life. I don't want it anymore. I mean, my podcast that I started back in 2014, it was all about paranormal events with a Christian biblical perspective. And just the stuff that would happen while I would do a show. I mean, it's unbelievable. I got stories. I don't want to get off track here.
We'll do another show on that specifically. Well, hold on. Before we keep going, I've got to do a couple of thank yous for the super chats because I've been so enthralled by everything we've been talking about. I haven't said anything about these. Cindy Smith sent a sticker. Thanks for that, Cindy. Had several people sign up. You guys, I really appreciate it. Michael Kenny says press 17 for these guys. We did. Baby Yoda, my favorite. I hope you saw that. I made a Baby Yoda emoji right there for you, buddy. Thank you for that. Melissa Brush says, love Red Pill. Y'all are great. Talking about you guys. Thank you for that. Brutus DM says, you can't handle the truth. King David was nominated by the Upper Shoal, dominated by righteous Israelites to conquer the tip of the spear. He came back as the bad guy from World War II and is described as the Pale Horseman. That I can see that being the case. And then let's see, Melissa Bush, thank you once again. Social Observer wants to know if you guys are the guys from Hollow Earth Theory, and you are. Banish the Shadow says, is the Army of Northern Virginia a modern incarnation of the Collins elite? A U.S. general suggested that our favorite Anon QAnon is in the Army of Northern Virginia project. Have you guys ever heard of the Army of Northern Virginia? I mean, I from what I understand, it's just it's just a one of many military stations, and that is particularly something to do with information warfare. So I don't think that the Collins Elite and this connect specifically. I would imagine that the Collins Elite, kind of spawned many different, additional think tanks or specific groups within the United States government. And that is something I wanted to ask you guys, if you have been able to track this throughout time. Banish the Shadow says, Eminem said, Merry Christmas from Australia. Red Pill 78 guests and wonderful patriots. Thank you, RP, for the news and amazing guests you have on your show. Prayers for POTUS, his family, and all patriots. Where we go one, we go all. Chuck buried in New Zealand. He has a wealth of information. I don't know who Chuck is, but Eminem, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. And Baby Yoda, once again, appreciate that. I grown dank nugs. Thank you for the super chat. Sweet Pea said, I'm happy to be a member and to support your channel. Keep up the great work. I can't wait to get the t-shirt I bought last night. Make sure you take a picture and tag me on Twitter, Sweet Pea. God's Daughter says, thank you for your work, and I want to give a shout out to Methods too. Always love giving a shout out to Methods. I'm glad you're here, bud. And Social Observer says, I watched the Hollow Earth Chronicles on Vimeo. Interesting, but too much Bible thumping. Abrahamic religions caused us to lose our ancient history. Well, I think that if you have that opinion, Social Observer, then that's one of the beautiful things about America. But I would say that specifically your ability to frame things through the lens of Christianity is the reason that I initially thought it would be great to have you guys on the show talking about this specific thing, because these types of things can be difficult for people to look at. They look at them and they say it's not doctrine, it's not in line with my personal worldview, so therefore it must be heretical, and I don't even want to think about it. But we do ourselves a disservice if we're not willing to ask questions and to look at the research. And if we've got the government actually performing satanic rituals and bringing about Hillary Clinton is the whore of Babylon. Mind is reeling about that one. I think that we need to be talking about it. We need to look at it, and we need to also, maintain our belief system and be able to work it through it.
Hey, what's this guy's name?
Social Observer.
Social Observer. First of all, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching Hollow Earth Chronicles. That was a labor of love putting that film together. It was years in the making, and so first of all, I just want to thank you for taking the time to watch it, and thanks for the good feedback on it. When you enter into this mindset that we have all been born into a time of what we call rationalism, that is where the de-supernaturalizing of our history has taken place. And so I think we do ourselves a major disservice when we view things with a rationalistic American perspective. And forgive me if you're not from America, but in America, we're brought up with this super rational. It's like everything has to be rational and it has to make sense, and we're not going to really investigate anything that goes against the norm. It's like the government wants to teach us things from the time we're infants until the time we're going into the workforce, and so we have to kind of unlearn some of the rationality. And I think the problem is a lot of Christians aren't ready to pardon my words here, but it's almost like in order to evolve mentally and understanding, we have to de-evolve first. We have to de-evolve back from all of the programming. And I mean, they've been telegraphing their punches for years through TV, through movie, through public schools, through everything. And so once we can go back to take a supernatural worldview, if there's a supernatural world, then we have to understand that there's going to be supernatural beings. We know that there's going to be entities. Mm-hmm. And so that begs the question, obviously, there's a creator and there is a hierarchy of spiritual beings. And that's why people get demon possessed. I mean, that's why we have to deal with some of the things we're dealing with. And so here we are now on a platform talking about supernatural paranormal happenings. And the one source out of the entire world, mark my words on this, people, and I say this in love, the one source we have that is 100% accurate, showing all of this stuff unfolding, is the Bible. I mean, every other religious book that's out there might have they might make 2 out of 3 shots or 1 out of 3 shots, but the Bible is the only one that has a 10 out of 10 shot record. And I just want to make one quick statement here. We're dealing with a collection of 66 ancient books. They were not put together in a Bible back in the day. They were scrolls. They were on papyrus, or parchment. And so what we're dealing with is we got 66 books that have been collected and they've been vetted very finely by men, yes, but through the power of God's Spirit. Now, if there is a God who created us, wouldn't he have the power to put his spirit and his discernment on man to be able to do whatever he wants them to do to preserve his word? If there was a creator, why would he not have the power to give us his word, his basic instructions for us before we leave earth? I mean, these are things to ponder. And it's not so much about Bible thumping. It's trying to show that the Bible is a supernatural book that lays out these prophecies. Now, my challenge to anyone here, we've got 66 books penned by over 40 different authors. 40 different authors penned all these books under the power,
3 languages.
In 3 different languages on various continents over the span of thousands of years. You can't go to 2 different public libraries and find 3 books that meet this criteria in one city, let alone all of these papyruses and these scrolls that have been collected by the sages over the years, and they all coincide supernaturally. And this isn't a debate. I appreciate your opinion, to have your own, you do what you want to do. And we don't want to have any beef with anybody here. But I would encourage you to consider the supernatural aspect of this book, this collection of books. There's just too many supernatural perfections in there that God had to do that.
I was just going to say, it depends on your basis of truth. That's the foundation of how you view the world. And with higher entities, with Hollow Earth Chronicles, the world has an answer for most of these things. We look at what does the Bible say about it, because that is our basis of truth. So that's our worldview. We also try to take it from different civilizations and throughout history and look at it in that aspect as well. But we view it through a biblical lens. How does that apply? How can we apply what that says about it? So.
But regardless, I very much want to thank you for watching Hollow Earth Chronicles.
Completely.
I don't apologize for teaching my beliefs, because I've been called by God to stand up as a last days watchman and to be a researcher who's not scared to talk about the hard topics. And I'll be the first one to tell you that American modern Christianity does not represent me or my brother.
Amen.
Good stuff. Angela Jones said 2 of my faves, Red Pill 78 and Justen Faull. Thank you for that. Baby Yoda said, love you folks. Love you too, Baby Yoda. And Big Hair Tsunami said, in memory of my little dog I lost last week. Oh, Big Hair Tsunami, I'm so sorry to hear that. Baby girl, rat terrier, and chihuahua. Please spend more time with your pets. Show them love. Teach others how to love their pets. All of us need to be led by example. Many pet owners don't know any better. The reason I appreciate animals so much, and I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, the reason I love them so much is because an animal is pure love. They don't have this cynical worldview that they have to cut through in order to, want to hang out with you after work. Animals don't have to shrug off the rigors and the stresses of the day. All they want to do is sit in your lap and have you hold them and kiss them. And they take away all of that pain and the junk from the day. Absolutely love my animals, and I think those are wise words from Big Hair Tsunami. I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your pet. Dr. B, our good mutual friend Dr. B, says, great interview, awesome guests. And God's Daughter says, there are many supernatural events in the Bible. An angel walked through walls to bust Peter out of prison, just like aliens of today. Now, getting back to the point that you were making
That was awesome. That was awesome. And what's up, Dr. B? We're talking about Celia here. Am I allowed to say her name? Celia, we love you. Fall Brothers love you. Thank you for all that you do to help us and support what we do. God bless you. And also want to say Merry Christmas to our homeboy down in Australia. I forgot his name, but I do want to say thank you for the holiday wishes. Merry Christmas to you down under, my friend.
The thing about it is that we like that this rationalism that we've been raised with. I mean, we've been taught to look past the idea that anything might be supernatural, that there might be something other than a scientific explanation for something. And, also that to believe in God or to have some belief in a higher power means that you are fundamentally unintelligent. I mean, you are not, if you're not a scientist and you don't subscribe to their doctrine, then, that means something's wrong with you. And most of science is just a theory. It's just the best theory that they have today, and it's constantly changing. So their truth is not objective. It's subjective, only based upon what they want to define it as right now. But when you have faith, that is objective truth, because this is what's real, and this is what I believe in.
And, let me just throw one other little nugget out there. When you read the book of Genesis, like the book of Genesis, the beginning, where it all began, there's so much in Genesis that our modern scientists are finally starting to understand. Like this still blows my mind today that you've got scientists that they've spent their whole lives as an atheist or as a possible agnostic. Well, something's out there, we just don't know what. It's like that locker in Men in Black where they open that locker and there's like all that little world of aliens in there, and they're like, it's like they don't know what's outside that locker, and that's how a lot of scientists are. But the modern science in the field of different types of science, getting into different types of physics, just mind-blowing stuff. A lot of the things that were theorized back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they're now putting two and two together and finding out that science, what they're getting to in their science, is showing that Genesis is an actual historical record. Now we don't need science to prove that. We take it by faith. But for the person who might be on the fence about it, who might be kind of like, well, that's a great place to look, because Genesis, go back and read the creation account. It's unbelievable. Now I do need to add something here. I got a text from Chad Riley. Chad Riley, he wanted me to mention that there are two terms that show up in the document, in the FBI document 6751. Two terms show up about these beings, locus and talus. These are the terms that I referred to. I didn't say them by name, but these are the terms that go right back to the playbook of Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, the Root Race, Manly P. Hall, all of that.
Very common in the New Age as well.
Very common. And they also talk about this spiritual dimension. They talk about it being, brace yourself for this. The FBI document actually refers to the spirit realm as the ethereal plane.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, you can't get any more specific.
Yeah. Real quick, Social Observer had another comment. Why were the Knights of Templar killed for exposing the Vatican, for suppressing the ancient scrolls they found, and ultimately our true history?
There's a lot of conspiracy surrounding the Vatican, surrounding any branch of the Vatican and any secret order, which there are numerous secret orders in the Vatican, including ties to the International Bank. You've got the IMF. You've got all there's a massive conspiracy involving the Vatican. And while not all roads lead to Rome, most of them do.
Most of them do. Well, here's an important distinction too. I mean, faith in our Creator and the ruling structure of organized religion, they're two completely different things. I mean, I'll be the first to say, people, like to point to, corruption in the church, but I see corruption in the church and corruption in the government and corruption in business and banking. It's all the same to me. It's all the shadow government or the deep state.
Well, to add to that, man, we believe, just like Justin was saying, to kind of clear this up a little bit, we don't consider ourselves religious. We believe that the Bible was divinely inspired, that God spoke through man and penned it. The Bible is the word of God, and we believe that Jesus is the Christ. We don't agree with what man has done with that. So when man gets involved, everything, goes down the toilet.
We're the guys who have really stirred things up at every church we've been a part of, like to the point where we finally just have to leave because the pastor won't preach the truth. He doesn't like our film. We've been making even short documentaries back in film school, stuff that we've never released like to everybody, about the New World Order and about the coming one world religion, and exposing the Vatican and exposing Billy Graham. Even there goes a bombshell. There goes somebody's probably gonna get really ticked off for me to say that, but we made a documentary back in film school showing Billy Graham denying that Jesus Christ is the way to the Father. Billy Graham was teaching this totally new age doctrine on Trinity, TBN, the biggest Christian broadcasting network. He's on there with Robert Schuller. Both of them are we believe to be Freemasons. When we were in Washington, D.C. working on a film project last year, we went to the House of the Temple, the biggest, it's like the Mecca for Freemasons for their temple. And we went to the D.C. temple. We got in because our like second great uncle was a famous 33rd degree Freemason. He's dead now. But we were able to get in, and
we had no ties to him at all.
Yeah, we didn't even know him, but we dropped his name in order to get special treatment. And they had his picture up. They had our family member's picture up in the D.C. lodge. They were honoring him, so they gave us special privileges. With that said, we asked the guy about Billy Graham. Now, I had already seen Billy Graham teach a different gospel, and we know that Billy Graham was very, very tight with the Pope John Paul II. Anyway, I don't want to digress, but the point is, we've had pastors literally want to kick us out of their lives for trying to teach them the truth, just trying to share information, and we went from church to church to church to church for years. The church isn't ready for this because they're so being fed with, cotton candy and bubble gum that you try to give them any kind of truth that's going to make them uncomfortable. And so that's why I tell you, we don't, we're not part of this mainstream churchianity of America. We believe ourselves to be part of like the remnant, the awakening that's coming in this last days, where people are going to wake up and they're going to be soldiers for Christ, and they're not going to be scared to go face to face with these types of hard topics or the topics that you're bringing to the table.
All right. Well, getting back on track, you got a text from Chad there.
Yeah, so Chad just wanted me to make sure that I mentioned that there are specific terms in this document, talus and locus, which you can find in the books and writings of Theosophy.
And what do those mean?
We don't have time to get into all that tonight. We really need to move forward. It would be a total tangent.
Okay.
You were, and maybe we want to go there now, maybe later, but you were talking about how has this continued throughout history. So like,
yes,
we've got the Collins elite. We've got, that is as much information as we can find out about them. But the cool thing about this documentary, we were led to Ray Boucher, and Justin was talking about him earlier. The whole thing is basically this trip from point A to B to C, all the way up to finally getting to Ray Boucher through all the difficulty and things we have. But the important thing about him is that two members of the Department of Defense contacted him in the early 90s. And these were elderly gentlemen. He would not disclose their name. He made promises to them, and he didn't break that. But he does go into some detail, some extensive detail about his conversations with them and meeting privately in a hotel room somewhere. And they basically hit him up because he was the state director for MUFON for his state, Nebraska. Was it Nebraska?
Yeah, it was the Nebraska MUFON.
I believe it was. So he had that. He was a theologian, even an exorcist.
Yeah, he's on record. Matter of fact, you can Google Ray Boucher's name. He's on the official academia list. Like he's a doctor. The guy's got like tons of credentials. Theology major. Matter of fact, if you want, I could probably, maybe when Chad gets on in a little bit, I'll pull up that information for you. But people who want to look at his credentials. He was a Baptist minister. He was a Lutheran minister,
Anglican
priest, and an exorcist. Right off the bat, I thought his theology might not really be in line because he's going from this to this to this. But after talking with him, the guy is sound. And interestingly, after a few weeks after the film aired, for the first time, this just happened. He now got diagnosed with some weird, strange cancer. So if anybody's watching this and they're believers, pray for him, please, because he's it's some weird, like I'd never heard of this type of cancer, and it just got like diagnosed out of nowhere.
Wow.
But Ray Boucher was contacted by these men, and they wanted to meet with him privately. And so he said that they had a couple phone conversations. And by the way, in this film, everybody, as we went on this research, everybody that we talked to kept saying the same thing. You got to talk to Ray Boucher. You got to get Ray Boucher.
He's the guy.
And we couldn't get in touch with him. Like we had every contact trying to get us connected. Like, I mean, any reference that we had was good with Ray, but he just wouldn't do it. You know, at first he was like, well, he's like, you know, things are real busy for me right now. And he kind of nicely told us no. I come back a couple weeks later. I'm like, hey, we really need you in this film. You know, we've talked to Nick Pope, who, you know, a lot of people know Nick Pope. He's a UFO researcher.
Yes.
Anyway, Nick Pope, he's no stranger to any of this. And Nick Pope, by the way, you know, I talked to Nick Pope. He told myself and Tom Horn that there are organizations just like the Collins Elite in existence in the UK. So he said that it's very likely
not a standalone group.
Yeah, these things are going on all over in every government. So Ray Boucher finally agrees to come on and do an interview. Like, I mean, we're talking like, you know, like weeks and weeks and weeks of trying to get him on. Finally, he's like, okay, I'll do it. But I won't tell you when or where. I'm like, I'm a filmmaker. Like, what is this? So finally, we're down in Nebraska. We're in Nebraska. We're set up in a hotel room. We don't even know what time we're going to meet with him the next day. Like, we didn't even find out until the next morning what time and where we were going to meet. So he finally comes over to our hotel room secretly. And I mean, the guy was extremely, I mean, it was a clandestine meeting. I mean, like literally, like he wanted to make sure there was no chance of anybody else funneling into what we were doing. And it took weeks and weeks to get him on board finally. So Ray Boucher meets with the DOD and they tell him that there is a group in our government working on taxpayer dollars. Like our money is paying for all of this. And they're doing satanic rituals. And it's these rituals that are opening up communication with higher entities. This is happening with the Department of Defense. Like, we're not dealing with FBI, we're dealing with Department of Defense now. And he explained rituals where he hinted at human sacrifice on taxpayer dollars. Like, let me say that again.
Not surprised.
But
the members did, not just Ray.
Yeah, this is what the DOD, the two men who were part of the group, they told Ray Boucher. They said that our bigger group, I mean, this is like a spitting image of the Collins Elite story. Mm-hmm. But it's years later. And they're saying that they are part of a group who were sacrificing human beings in the communication ritual. I mean, I think did somebody just ping in here?
Chad's in the call now, and looks like he's taken over. He's taken over the the screen. What's up, Chad? How are you? Chad, we still don't have audio from you, buddy.
You know what? He probably accidentally did that because I did not text him yet.
Okay, all right. Well, we're gonna stop his screen share there. Okay. There we go.
So the thing that, to go back, what happened was this Ray Boucher situation is that these men are telling him what's going on behind closed doors in a private Department of Defense facility, a black location. You know, this is one of those locations, you know, that just, you'll see these things popping up with federal projects. You know, 1 minute there's something going on there, and like the next week it's completely hollowed out, nothing going on there. Mm-hmm. And he said that they were even using they hinted that human sacrifice was taking place. They didn't give like super specifics on the sacrifice that happened, but he said that this was one of the things that was taking place, and they were tapping into psychic abilities. They were doing whatever these entities required of them to prove their allegiance. And in order to do this, he says that they started out researching. This is just like the Collins Elite. I can't stress that enough. Mm-hmm. This was that bombshell moment where it's like, okay, we now are seeing that this was a modern version of the Collins Elite. Mm-hmm. And that they started, Ray, I'm going to use Ray's words. Let me just quote Ray Boucher. He says that they started out with they started out researching, and then he said it turned into a we can do better mentality. Exactly what we talked about earlier in the show. Starts off somebody's nicking and diming some dope, and then they're trying to build an empire of drugs, and you know they can't leave well enough alone. You know, and it's just like
next thing you know, they got a house in Miami.
Hey, it's just like Walter White not wanting to go back to the P2P cook.
That's
it is. You know,
did you guys watch El Camino?
Oh yeah, we saw it.
Okay,
you know, can we just comment on this? Can we both give our opinion real fast?
Yeah.
Okay, El Camino. My take on it was not worthy of being a movie. It was just another. No, hold on. It was just an extended episode of Breaking Bad.
It was. That's all it was.
And it was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Well worth it. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it wasn't a movie.
But that's why it came out on Netflix. You know, I mean, like I definitely saw it as just an extended episode. I mean, if it was a movie, it would have come out in the theater, but it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. But we did enjoy it, and we are diehard Breaking Bad fans. But Walter White, great example. He starts off just trying to make enough money to pay for his chemo and give his family some money to live on.
Doing the pseudo cook.
Yeah, cooking. The pseudo cook. He's cooking in a little trailer, and then before you know it, he's cooking in an underground lab. He's got a deep underground military base. He's making blue ice.
We can do better with methylamine, right?
Yeah, methylamine. But it's just like
train heist.
It's like Daniel LaRusso couldn't just he just couldn't leave well enough alone, and so Johnny had to come in and sweep the leg.
Next thing you know, Danny's trying to learn in Cobra Kai. Did you guys see the the third Karate Kid? I never seen it. And then I watched the show Cobra Kai on YouTube this past summer. 2 seasons, 2 excellent seasons. I was very surprised. It's a great show. But come to find out that Daniel LaRusso went to the dark side for about 20 minutes in Karate Kid 3. Real quick.
Hey, wait. He is in the dark side. Let's not have an argument here. Daniel LaRusso has gone to the dark side. He's sold his soul for money in car dealerships. And Johnny is the good guy. I will wear my Cobra Kai shirt proudly now.
I loved that. I love that they flipped the script and that they had essentially changed roles. Okay. They made him a much more interesting character by humanizing him, I mean, it's great. So Carissa Hartunian said the Bible is very fitting for this convo. Thanks. And my good friend God's Guy and Gina Girl says God is the author. That's correct. Drip Drop, we are still friends. Drip Drop, I hope you know that the way that I present my information is based upon my own personal worldview. So although Tom Fitton and I might not agree on absolutely every point, I still like Tom Fitton. I still respect his work, and I will respectfully disagree when there's something we don't agree on. But that doesn't mean that I'm trying to mislead people. AZ Finn says, the bearded brother sounds like a bit like Crow 777. Compliment. How do I buy the film? You can buy the film by going to the description of this video, but you know what I'm going to do for you? I am going to drop a link. I'm going to drop the link. Wait a second.
Fourthwatchfilms.com.
Yeah, fourthwatchfilms.com. Would you prefer that people buy it directly from the website and not from Vimeo?
The benefit of going to the website is that you have all the different options. You can get it streaming, you can get the DVD, and right now we are doing a 20% off on the combo bundle. Oh. You can get Hollow Earth Chronicles, the film that we've referenced, and I think we're going to do another show on this eventually. Yep. Yes. But you can get both of the films on DVD right now for 20% off. So,
excellent.
But you can also stream it all from the same page.
Well, you guys can go, and I'm going to make this a clickable link so that people can just HTTP. Okay, so yes, you guys, I'm going to drop this link one more time, and you can go straight in a new tab. Don't leave the broadcast, but you can go ahead and download or purchase the films from their website. Yes, I'm extremely excited to do a Hollow Earth show. That's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. You brought up Admiral Byrd before. That's another subject that I wrote a paper about Admiral Byrd when I was like in 2nd grade or something like that. And there is like not a lot of I guess I haven't been able to find necessarily reliable information about Operation High Jump. It's kind of shrouded in secrecy, and the official explanation of what happened seems very strange. I mean, like, I've heard the same, story that you guys just told, and I would love to know more based upon your research on it. But did we want to bring Chad in? Do we want to have Chad tell us the story?
Yeah. Let's tie up a couple loose ends real quick, and then we'll bring in Chad. So we had a really good meeting with Ray Boucher, and Ray Boucher had a lot to tell us about, and this is the only like video disclosure. Like that's what's really cool is that this is going to be the only place you're going to be able to see. And I also want to explain, like, when you're watching this film, this is a little different format from our normal films. Like our normal films are more like studio set up, kind of like Ancient Aliens with a bunch of B-roll and fancy graphics. And with this film, this was a live action. Like this was literally like you go on location with us and you get to sit down and talk with these people and do multiple cameras set up. And anyway, the cool thing about that is you really get to be up close and personal. And it's kind of like they used to do in the horror movies back in the 30s and 40s. Like they didn't show the scary thing. they allowed you to see it being told about. And like, anyway, like to see the pain in these people's face. And I'm not trying to like exploit these people's pain, but it helps you better understand what really happened.
It's real.
Personal testimonies. I can talk about it. I can share these things with you all day long, but to see it on the face of the person that experienced it, like there's something about that. There's just something about that. They're still living this every day. But Ray Boucher, he literally connected so many dots for us. He validated, just crazy amounts of information for us. Yes, in fact, there are other groups working with entities. You don't just have the FBI. You don't just have, clandestine CIA operations, but you got, now we know Department of Defense is on board with this as well. But here's the other thing I just wanted to mention. We talked to a guy who was a former CIA, and he's now currently an agent with FEMA. Oh yeah, our friends at FEMA, right? They love us. Yeah, they're just getting those camps ready for us in those body boxes. But anyway, so I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with a guy, Russ Dizdar. He wrote a book called The Black Awakening about the super soldiers.
No.
So Russ Dizdar, he's an awesome researcher and speaker, and he's a minister as well. But he got us connected with this guy. His name is Jeff. And we'll just call him Agent Jeff. And Agent Jeff is now working with FEMA, but we talked to him privately, and he told us that a friend of his was in Hawaii, and she was walking out, like she had this ritual to walk out like with her ankles in the water on the beach, and she would call out to these entities, and the UFOs would come down, and they would telepathically communicate with her while she's standing in the beach in the water. And we did not include this in the film. This is a bonus nugget. She comes back, and she's meeting with Jeff, they're friends, and so they go out to dinner. Jeff's working, he's working for the company at the time. And she's trying to tell him about all these entities and these aliens. And he tried to warn her that it goes against the Christian faith, that these are the demons and the fallen angels, according to scripture, that, you can't trust these things. And she gets like frozen, and she says, they're here and they're not happy with you. Now her eyes changed. He's feeling it now. He's getting the chills. So he's like, okay, wow. He presented her with the gospel. They didn't like it when he started talking about Jesus. So she says, you need to watch your back. And he's feeling this presence now. Like the whole atmosphere changed. He leaves the restaurant, gets in his car. He says, as he's driving, he sees what looks like a drone, and it gets closer and closer to him. And he realizes that it's some type of a craft.
Oh my gosh.
This is as he's driving home. He says that some type of a directed, are you familiar with directed energy weapons?
Oh, yes, definitely. California, all day.
Okay, so he says there was a type of directed energy weapon that was shot from this craft into his car, and it created some type of a burning sensation in his nerves that he has dealt with. I don't know if he's better now. I don't remember.
Wow.
And he said this was all after trying to give the gospel to this lady and tell her to quit communicating with these entities. And they were entities that were presenting themselves as aliens. So anyway, that's interesting, because when people try to get involved in the warfare and they try to warn people to leave, and they mention, and this is the thing, they mention the name of Jesus. Now let's make a statement to our friend real quick from earlier today. Forgive me for not remembering his screen name.
Social Observer.
Social Observer. This one's for you. Very interesting fact that we came across in our research. There's a group called the CE4 Research, and it's headed up by Joe Jordan, who is a Christian, and he deals with MUFON and UFOs and aliens and abductions. And he's got thousands of cases now where people were being forcefully tormented by these alien entities. And it was a type of abduction. Like they were being abducted. There were things taking place. Hundreds of them now have been freed by just calling on the name of Jesus, the English name, not even a Hebrew name, the English name of the Messiah from the Bible. They called on that name, and the attack stopped. Hundreds of them. He has got them on record. They're case files. Now, what's interesting about this is that same name, Jesus, is used to fight sleep paralysis attacks, which I believe are connected. I've actually done some podcasting on sleep paralysis. I've had sleep paralysis as a Christian. My point of all this is that a lot of these demonic attacks, and this is leading us up to Chad Riley, by the way, they flee at the name of Jesus. That's something to consider. So if you're on the fence and you're thinking, well, these Fall brothers, they're onto some really good information, but I just can't quite accept that Christian biblical worldview that they hold. I just want to encourage you to think about how these attacks stop at the name of Jesus. And the Bible says that at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that he is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And there's coming a day where people will have to profess that name. But right now you have a choice. Right now it's an option. And right now people are calling on that name to be delivered from alien abductions. They're being delivered from all of this. Now, what's interesting is that Chad's contact, he's about to come on and tell the story. He contacted Greg Renrich, and he's worked with him. And Greg Renrich has extreme security clearances. I mean, you're talking Area 51, Groom Lake. I mean, Chad will give you the list. He was supposed to be part of the film, and he backed out last minute. And Chad's going to tell the story. It's fascinating. We give the full story in the film. But what's really interesting is that he had to sign an affidavit before going in and working in a certain underground military base. He had to sign an affidavit saying that he wouldn't even use the name Jesus inside of this deep underground military base, not even if he stubbed his toe. He couldn't even say Jesus as a cuss word because they were working in the presence of entities that called themselves the Nephilim. This is right out of Genesis chapter 6, the Nephilim, the hybrid beings of angels and men. Now, with that said, Chad Riley is the one who dealt with him. And I am going to look down here, and Chad is probably ready to rock. Let me just text Chad right now. Okay. I just texted him. I already had it typed in. What did you want to say?
Well, I was going to say while he's coming on, we kind of went on a tangent with at the end of Ray Boucher. I just want to make sure that people get it, that these two men that came to him, they witnessed the satanic rituals being performed to make contact with these beings.
Yeah, they were actually in the room.
Right. So they saw that, they witnessed it personally, and big red flag, they didn't want to be a part of it. And that's when they reached out to Ray, because his background being the state director of MUFON, and then also with his theological background as well, they wanted to get to him and say, what is this? What can you recommend? What advice can you give us?
But they knew that it was demonic, and they knew that this was not anything. Not only was it illegal and immoral to sacrifice a human, but we're now doing this in a government facility paid for by government money,
right.
Probably
sanctioned
by and the abductions, they're abducting children. This gets into that whole conspiracy of abducting people.
The reason that this resonated with me so much is because it allows you to really thread together so many different things that for many years I just assumed were not connected. But then the older I get, the more that I learn, the more research that I do, the more it appears to me that none of this stuff is disconnected. It is all part of the same thread.
Mm-hmm. The big thing that got to me on, and this kind of goes back to the original question that was in the chat. The 6751 document talked about them being interdimensional, not interplanetary, and that's a huge thing to understand and to not overlook. Because what they did was you had they wanted to be able to sell it to the public in a fictitious way, so they downplay it. So you have like the little kazoo guy in the Flintstones. You have different things that, and there were a number of them even back
little
in
Martians, little green
in the
men.
50s and 60s. You had like the honeymooners and I Love Lucy that were just making fun of it, or even in our lifetime with Mars Attacks, it's very fictitious and it's comedic and it downplays it. So it just plants little seeds, and it's like, well, anybody who believes in this stuff is, they're garbage. We shouldn't even give them a platform or a stage to be able to speak about it. But when you look back to the 40s and they say that they're that they're interdimensional, they can break through rifts. That puts a whole nother spin here. And when we go back to the biblical perspective on this, that lines up exactly what happened when Satan took Jesus. That lines up exactly what happened when Satan took Jesus to the high point, the high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world at one time. It also parallels with what happened in Job when Satan was walking to and fro in the earth, up and down in it, and then he was able to hold an audience with God. That's an interdimensional feat. So we look at it in those terms, and that's again going back to our biblical world.
What about makes me think of the Book of Enoch? Didn't Enoch go on a spaceship or something?
Right. I mean,
well, you got the story in Ezekiel where the Spirit of God powers this craft that comes down. In Ezekiel's the vision that he taught, I mean, it's unbelievable. You're reading about a wheel within a wheel. Like, how does that even? It's just crazy. There is language in our Bible that is nothing less than mind-blowing physics that our world hasn't even come into knowledge of yet.
It was just pinned with the best mind and information that they had to deal with at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Chad Riley is telling me that he is connected.
Yeah, Chad is in here. He's muted. I'm going to unmute him. Well, maybe Chad, you're going to have to... There he goes. Chad, you are unmuted. Are you there? Might have to select his microphone in his settings.
Oh, yeah. Chad, if you can hear this, you got to select the microphone settings, bro.
Okay, while he's looking for that, I'm going to do these next couple of super chats. Eminem says that Eminem does watch Russ Dizdar. Scott Clanton said, hey, you. Thanks, Scott. Social Observer says, I believe in Jesus, but not the way most people do. Filled with Hope says, okay, I'm tracking my sleep, and it's nuts. I have sleep paralysis. I still have night terrors. Less now, but still do. I sometimes have 3 minutes of REM. 2 nights ago, I had 80% deep sleep. So what's your experience here?
Okay, I tell you what, just to save time,
I'm sorry.
if you will go to my YouTube channel, Justen Faull, JUSTENFAULL. It's spelled differently than it is on the graphic for the show.
I screwed up.
No, it's okay. No, this is important. Let me just get this out real fast. This is if you're experiencing sleep paralysis and this is something you're facing right now, go to my channel, or you could just go to YouTube and just type in a search. Spell my name right, Justen Faull, sleep paralysis. If you can't find the show that I did on it, email me personally at Grady Styles, GRADYSTYLES @gmail.com. Email me personally if you can't find it. I will send you a link to listen to the full breakdown, and we get into a lot of aspects of it.
Awesome.
He's had a lot worse than that, so don't feel bad.
This guy.
God's Daughter said, just ordered the Brothers DVDs from their site. Thank you so much for your faith and your work. God loves you, and so do I. That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Social Observer wants to know, why is the New Testament out of chronological order? You can answer that in just a second, because Tanette Booth said, this isn't our first go-around, folks. Thank you very much, all of you, for those super chats. And looks like Chad has raised his hand. Chad, are you there?
Yeah, can y'all hear me now?
I can hear you.
What up, bro? Chad Riley in the hizzy.
Welcome to the program, Chad. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here. Red Pill, how you doing?
I'm excellent, sir. Excellent. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So I guess you guys wanted me to talk about Greg Renrich and possibly Roger Morneau and some of that.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, Greg Renrich is a lieutenant south colonel. Actually was also mixed up in quite a bit of black stuff, but he has actually been out at Dulce as well as S4. And he said that they all have different numbers. Like, I believe if I remember correctly, he said Dulce was actually designated as S20. And he basically said that when he worked there, one of the first things they made him do was sign an affidavit saying that they weren't allowed to use the name Jesus at all in these tunnels, even if they stubbed their toe or, just joking around. But he said while he was in there, he witnessed these giants that were in there. He said that they range anywhere between 10 to 25 feet tall, and said that they actually referred to themselves as the Nephilim, and said that they were preparing for an intergalactic war with God, and they believed that they were going to win.
Now, Chad, just real quick, did he give you a description of what they looked like? I mean, were they just people as if they were 10 to 25 feet tall, or were these closer in line to like the red-haired giants that we've heard information about here on planet Earth?
He said that they actually two different varieties. He saw some that were more looked like grays, and he said that some of them actually looked like Nordics.
Okay.
So there's two different kinds that he actually saw, and even Stan said that he had encountered some of the Nordic-looking ones as well, because there was a discussion that he had with us where he said that he was in a room talking to these two individuals that were very tall, and that's not what put him on edge. He just said that all of a sudden it dawned on him. He felt like these are not humans. I don't know what they are, but they're not human. He said that he felt like he was a canary in a cage, and like they were the cats, like they were the hunter and he was the prey.
Wow.
And this was at the United Nations meeting that he attended while he was working on the anti-gravity project in Australia.
Wow.
Now, Chad, real quick, Chad, when we were going through the process of this film, and we had already gotten to a certain point in the project, and Greg Renrich decided that he didn't feel comfortable coming on camera or even giving us a phone interview at this point. It was a matter of like, I can't talk anymore. I'm done. I'm hanging it up. Tell the story. Let's just go ahead and give that story to everybody about when he and his wife were walking around on the ranch and they got hit with that biological attack.
Yeah, him and his wife were out on the property one day, and he had already come out and done a few shows talking about some of this stuff. And there was actually an incident before what I'm going to tell you, but the incident that happened first was that they came out to his family home, and basically they came in guns blazing, had everybody down on the floor, guns at their head. And for several years, his family wouldn't have anything to do with him after this happened. They just basically cut him off. And so, slowly but surely, his family had started coming back into his life. And, he was like, maybe I shouldn't really talk about this anymore because, I think I'd rather have my family. But there was another incident that happened. Him and his wife were out. This is back when I was working, trying to get him to come into the fold and actually let us come out there and either record him, on site or possibly even do like a Skype interview. And he said that one day while him and his wife were out walking the property, he said that all of a sudden they felt something hit them in the back of the neck. And he said that they reached back and touched the back of the neck. There was some sort of green residue. And not, long after that, him and his wife both became deathly ill. And at that time, he didn't know, if they were both going to die or what, but he started getting better, but his wife was getting worse. And he was afraid that she was going to die, whatever this was. And basically that was the catalyst that pretty much, was the deciding factor. Maybe I should just stop talking about this period.
Wow. What blows my mind about that still to this day, and I said this in the film, but the late J.C. Johnson, who was a cryptozoologist who I had amazing favor with this guy. Like, this guy just treated me like his own son when I got connected with him. He would take guys out to the Four Corners area. And if people aren't familiar with the Four Corners, there's a whole lot of Indian myth about entities coming through the portals and thunderbirds, garudas, pterodactyls. I mean, crazy animals, what appears to be animals of some other realm, or even animals of a prehistoric nature, based on what we're taught in school, of course. And he said that they would see these things out in the Four Corners area. And so he would take people out on guided tours, and he would take like mercenaries with machine guns, and they would go out and they would basically walk around and keep the group safe while they toured around the Four Corners area looking for some of these, these little gems, if you want to call it that. While he was out in the Four Corners area, he had this little, it was like a body cam, that goes across the chest, almost like a GoPro.
Yeah.
It was taking pictures like every so many seconds, just taking pictures. He had it set to some mode to like auto photo, and it was not video. It was just taking pictures, like stills. He ended up sending me a couple frames of video of what was like a gray alien that was translucent. Like he was cloaked in the green bushes. Like you could see through him. He took on the color and texture of the bushes, but you could see it was a gray alien.
Like Predator.
Yeah, dude, it was insane. Matter of fact, I'll send you this picture. I want you to see this. I have this. And yeah. J.C. Johnson died. He died a few years ago. I've got a tribute video. It's an unreleased interview I did with him. I'm going to try to release it. But in this video, he tells me that some of his colleagues were down in the Dulce area researching. And he says they got a little bit too close. He says this is common in Dulce. He says that there's a common attack down there. When you get a little too close to some of the government facilities that they don't want you to know about, they don't want you to get too deep. He said that they'll send out men in black. That's what he called them. He called them men in black. He says they'll go to your car, they'll find where you're parked, and they'll dust the handle of your car door right on the handle. So as soon as you touch it and open it, you're hit with a transdermal biological weapon. A transdermal means it's going to go right through the surface of the skin into your bloodstream. This is just like nicotine patches, or they got pain medicine that they're putting in patches. It's right through. They have biological weapons that are transdermal. He says that you barely touch that handle for a second, and then boom, your health starts to decline. And depending on the degree of what they put on your handle, you'll die, or you'll basically be handicapped for the rest of your life. Mm. And they do this to keep people at bay. They don't want people to get too close. And this lines right up with what happened with Tom Horn's brother-in-law in the film. Tom Horn's brother-in-law worked at Los Alamos, another conspiracy base, right? Another one of those big names. And Tom's sister, she started, at the time she began to hit puberty. This is important, I think. Right as she entered into puberty, she began to have these alien visitations in her bedroom.
Sleep paralysis and whatnot.
Sleep paralysis. She would basically, she couldn't move. She'd lay in bed and she'd have these entities looking like little gray aliens, little bulbous headed looking beings surrounding her. And that whole story, we're not going to tell the whole story, but it's in the film because I don't think we have time to tell the whole story. But she got older, and when her daughter got to that same age of puberty, she began to have the same types of demonic attacks with these bulbous headed gray aliens. Well, what's interesting is that this lady's husband, she starts to tell him about these things. One night he comes home from Los Alamos, and they start having some drinks. One thing leads to another. And before they know it, they're intoxicated, and she is just pouring her guts out to him about her childhood being visited by these entities and her history of this. And he says, well, that's crazy. He said, because we're working with stuff like that at Los Alamos. And so he starts to disclose some of the things that are going on in Los Alamos to his wife.
Which is a big no-no.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Listen, when you see, if you watch TV shows like Homeland or any of these other programs, like when you get a job at a security clearance at a certain level, the second you leave your house to go get dinner or to go to the mall, they've got a black ops team coming in and bugging your house.
You paid for it.
Yeah, you signed up for that when you got that security clearance.
Yeah.
And so he didn't know his house was bugged. And Tom didn't even say 100% the house was bugged, but that's the only explanation we can come to. So literally, he just pours it all out. He starts telling his wife about all this alien stuff going on that they, with craft and different things. And what was it, like 48 hours later? Yeah. A couple days later, I think I made a slip up the other day on another show. I said 24 hours, but I think it was like 48 hours. Mm-hmm. But literally a couple days after he discloses to his wife. He goes off to work, never comes home. And so she calls in and she's like, hey, where's my husband? He left for work and he never came home. And they said, yeah, he never showed up. We don't know. And so he disappears. He's off the face of the earth. And what's fascinating is that they declare him gone, and they're not going to give her any of the benefits that his entire life of working for the federal government, he was building up these benefits for his family. And so she's needing the extra money for her family. She's a single mom now. There's no dad in the picture. So she worked for the federal government. She starts rattling the cage up the chain, and she starts dropping information that they probably didn't want to hear. And so finally, after she rattles enough cages, they finally come back and they say, look, you have to have a body, to have a death certificate, mm-hmm. and you have to have a death certificate to get benefits. None of these you have. And she says, yeah, but this is what happened. And then as soon as she starts dropping facts about the whole thing, no questions asked. Here's your benefits. Shut up and leave us and never talk about this again.
Wow. Obviously they did something to her husband. And I think that it sounded initially, when I heard that story told in the film, it seemed like they just wanted to make him disappear, and they weren't thinking about the ramifications of, what's going to happen if he does disappear. I mean, what is his wife going to do? They just got rid of him. They axed him because he had broken his security clearance. He broke his oath. You can't do that. You can't do that. So, yeah.
They take it real seriously because... Yes. There's a narrative that has to be presented to the public. And part of that narrative is them telegraphing their punches over the years with TV shows and with movies and with even mainstream news. It's all presenting a narrative. And that's why it wasn't until just recently when they came out, when the Pentagon finally admitted that they are working. This was a big deal. This was a bombshell. The Pentagon said, finally, yep, we know more than you think we know about UFOs, and they are not of this world. And then you have this major professor at Harvard. I forget his name. I'd have to look it up. But there was a big write-up of this Harvard professor. And brilliant guy. And he believes there's a massive spaceship with entities in it. And it's closer than we think.
I've seen a lot of different images of, say, I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. It's what looks like, a completely invisible craft, like pulling up to the sun and sucking all of the solar radiation off of it. And you can see it, and then it like pulls away. Or there's other, I've seen all kinds of pictures of different craft out there. It's like,
well, Nimitz, they released that not too long ago, last year. Maybe.
Yeah.
There was also another bombshell that just dropped recently.
And Chad, people were saying in the chat that when you were speaking before, it was going in and out. So I don't know, maybe if you were on your phone, but just make sure you're talking directly into the mic. But please, what was it?
The most recent thing that just happened was John Greenwald Jr. over at the Black Vault. He had a gentleman by the name of Karl Marx on his show here recently, who was actually working out at Skinwalker Ranch. And he said that while he was out there, that they were ordered to do what you would call occult and esoteric things like seances and different things like that. And that by doing some of these things, that things were starting to manifest out there. They were leaving offerings and doing all sorts of weird things and using Ouija boards. And he said that whenever they would use the Ouija boards, that basically they would be attacked. So that was another big bombshell. It was just leading more credence to everything that we were saying in the film.
It's connecting all the dots between the different occurrences and the different branches of the occult, if you will, the different flavors of occultism. No matter what source they're using, they're all getting the same end of communication with these things, or torment. Sometimes they're tormented, sometimes they're getting information. It's crazy. I have a theory I'd like to share, and
please.
Some people may have heard something like this before, but we are raised in a culture where we're told don't do drugs, and they've classified our drugs like the hallucinogenic drugs. Mm-hmm. There's a class where they call it a hallucinogen. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe that hallucinogenic drugs are actually not hallucinogenic drugs. I believe that this gets into what the Book of Enoch talked about, where the fallen angels were teaching root cutting. They were teaching these earth sciences. And look, this is not like a plant growing, marijuana on it. And I say this because marijuana grows as a tree. It's something God created. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what people think about it, it's a God-made medicine, and it grows on a tree, and you take it how it is. It's like you don't have to go digging in a hole and mixing this with this in a cauldron. I mean,
sure.
Hey, Justin,
ayahuasca is a far cry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. What, Chad?
I was going to also bring up the point that, remember when we were at True Legends, remember I was over there talking to L.A. Marzulli, and he brought up the point that Graham Hancock's book, Supernatural, he was talking about one of the ayahuasca trips that he was on. And when he was in the spirit realm on this ayahuasca trip, he encountered the gray aliens.
Yeah, if you guys couldn't hear what Chad said, he broke up a little bit. He had a private interview with L.A. Marzulli at the True Legends conference, and he told him that Graham Hancock in one of his books was talking about on the ayahuasca, he was visited by a gray alien, which is interesting because usually we hear stories of ISIS appearing to someone, or actually one of Wes's friends claims to have met Isis, the Egyptian goddess, multiple times. I mean, you hear all of these crazy stories of this entity or that entity or this ascended master or that. What's interesting is that they all claim to be going to this ethereal plane, which is very similar to what happens when somebody astral projects. And this goes right back to government document 6751, that these entities that the government's communicating with are actually from the ethereal plane. Now, let me just add to this real quick. I believe that these drugs that are, they're not naturally occurring drugs. They have to be processed, and they have to be dug out of this root or that leaf. They have to be extremely processed and then combined together. Mm-hmm. You just don't stumble upon this.
Yes.
This is something, these are specific. It's like getting a cake recipe. It is specific. And if you don't have that specific recipe, you're never going to be able to go to the rainforest and put these things together. But what man did was man came in and man took those drugs and they synthesized them in a lab. Yeah. Going back to that Nazi pharmaceutical industry, all of this stuff working together to open up the people's perception of that other world. Mm. So rather than these things being hallucinogenic drugs, which they are to some kids don't understand them, but they're more than that. They're in my opinion, they're a tool. They're a key. It's like having a cell phone with a number already in there, and all you got to do is just push that button to communicate with the other realm.
It's a tool to pierce the veil.
It's what it is. And so what's crazy about all of this, and the timing of this couldn't be more impeccable. This is unbelievable. Last year, Wes and I had the opportunity to go to Burning Man to do some research and to preach the gospel. We weren't out there running around.
Research.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No, man, I didn't listen. No, I didn't smoke anything. I didn't eat anything. I didn't take anything from anyone. I literally drank my own water and made my own coffee.
There you go. There you go. You never know what you're going to find at Burning Man.
No. But so we go out there, and our mission was to get some footage, to get some research, and also to, we wanted to be able to pray with people and share Jesus with them. So anyway, here's what happened at Burning Man. We went to some of these seminars they have where they have like very intelligent people who are like who's who. Like these are people either really big in academia, or they're working in politics. They're connected with politicians, or they're working in Silicon Valley. Like these are like the big wigs of Silicon Valley over in California who will microdose in order to get technology. They'll take a microdose. They'll have some type of an encounter in their brain with this entity, and then they're all of a sudden making the latest Apple iPhone or the latest computer technology, the latest microchips for cameras, whatever. They're getting this by microdosing hallucinogens to communicate on that other plane. Now, what's crazy about this is I heard while I was at Burning Man that there was some legislation that they were trying to work on to legalize hallucinogens, specifically psilocybin, which is found in cow manure mushrooms, or grown however. So what's crazy is that they're telling us that they have a plan to bring about these things as therapeutic drugs.
I think it's already passed.
Yeah, well, it is now. This was last year. So now, like everything they told us privately in this tent at Burning Man, it's now happening, and they're trying to mainstream this stuff. And here's what it's doing. This is allowing the everyday Bob, Dick and Hank to be able to communicate with these entities now by taking the very substances that the entities taught mankind how to use to communicate with them.
It's all coming full circle.
And then you got Joe Rogan over there telling people, yes, take it, take the drugs.
It's no good. So people are going to be exposed to what they think is the truth, when in fact it's just another packaging of the lies. It's a sad thing, I mean, because I've read the research on using psilocybin as a treatment for, say, PTSD, and I believe also
MDMA.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah. And what's crazy is that MDMA started as a treatment for alcoholics. And so it's I can see the therapeutic goodness in so many different things, but then as soon as someone gets their hands on it and they say, hey, we can twist it, we can use it in such a way. I mean, I am stone cold sober, and I don't know that I would ever be comfortable with taking psilocybin as a medicine or any kind of hallucinogens or anything like that, but I know that there are people out there who could truly benefit from them. But giving everybody microdoses of LSD every day, I think Silicon Valley is screwed up already. And this might have something to do with the reason why.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say from personal experience, man, years ago, we found out that we could get mushrooms from my buddy's cow pasture, and we would take them like every weekend. Well, not every weekend. When
you were a kid, I was
in 10th grade.
Yeah. And you're now an adult in your 40s. So this is not yesterday.
I'm going to be 42 next month, actually. But so we found out that we could do that. And I was living for myself at the time, and not to give a complete testimony, but I did what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Before the Lord got a hold of my life. And so when you don't have the Holy Spirit living inside of you and you involve yourself in those things, they might be fun. You might enjoy them, take them recreationally, whatever. But if you do have the Holy Spirit, like I've been offered ayahuasca. Actually, it was DMT. I was offered that a handful of years ago, and I told them that I wouldn't take it. It was some of my friends. And the reason being is that I know what it is. We know what it is. You're actually crossing over, like you were saying, you're piercing the veil. And if you have the Holy Spirit inside of you, that would just be a massive red, big red bullseye on your back. So I don't know. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
Can I drop a quick little thing? Do I have time to say something pretty crazy about this to sum it up on that?
Yeah, go ahead. And I just want to tell everybody in the chat so that you don't bounce off. We are going to go through the latest drops once we get to the top of the hour. So everybody can just relax. I want to finish with these guys, give them the respect they deserve, because I love this stuff that we're talking about. Can't wait to have you guys back again, but keep going.
Thank you. And man, thank you guys, everybody, like all the cool comments and the encouragement. And
you got a great audience.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. All of you. Even if you don't agree with everything we're talking about, we value you guys, and we thank you all for tuning into this. we don't have to agree on every detail to be able to have conversation and to respect each other. But here's the thing I want to talk about real quick on this whole like hallucinogenic stuff. It's like it's all being bundled under this whole modern medicine, and they're calling it, it's pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the pharmacy. It's where you go to get your stuff. And what's interesting is that in the book of Revelation, there's this passage, excuse me, in the book of Revelation, and I'm not going to sit here and try to overanalyze what this says. I'm just going to tell you exactly what it says. You can take it for what it's worth. But this is in the time of the Great Tribulation. Like this is like the end of this age. Crap is hitting the fan, and God's putting plagues on the earth. Things are getting really bad. And this is what it says. It says, the rest of mankind who were not killed by the plagues, they did not repent of the works of their hands, nor did they give up worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone, which cannot see or hear or walk, nor did they repent of their murders or their sorceries. Now, whoa, they did not repent of their sorceries. What does that mean? I'm glad you asked. That word sorceries, and this is Revelation chapter 9. They did not repent of their sorceries, and that word in the Greek is pharmacia or pharmakia, however you want to say that.
Oh.
And so what we're dealing with are drugs that affect the psyche.
Yes.
Now, let me just say something. I'm not here to judge anybody on what they're doing in their personal lives. Every man is going to have to give an account for themselves. But when you start thinking about our culture after World War II and that whole Nazi pharmaceutical industry coming over here with paperclip, which is all on record, it's declassified. When you consider that the Nazis were tied up into heavy occultism, they were communicating with entities, and we'll talk about this on another show. This whole pharmacia, this pharmakia, they started to produce drugs that were affecting the psyche. As a matter of fact, crystal meth dates back to Nazi Germany.
Yep.
Most people don't know that. Adderall, Nazi Germany. Adderall is just a spinoff of the crystal meth that the Nazis were making.
Yep.
Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because we live in a culture where everybody takes an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or something to calm the psyche. By the time this happens in Revelation, people are going to be so stoned on these psychoactive drugs that calm people down and keep people's soul in the dirt, basically, to where they can't make, decisions. They don't care anymore. That is where this is headed. And the entities that we expose in our films, they want this to come about quicker than later. They want people to be able to be either sedated or in full communication with these hierarchy of demons. And yes, biblically, you can say there's a hierarchy of demons.
I think it's absolutely possible. Let's see. Was there anything else from the movies that we wanted to hit? I don't specifically remember anything, but we talked about so much stuff, and there was a bunch of things that I wanted to ask you guys, but then we got caught up in everything else. Well, why don't you know what? We got the last 3 minutes. I want you guys to tell everybody once again how they can get in touch with you, where they can go, and then tell us what you've got in store for the future.
The main website that we want to make sure everybody knows about is fourthwatchfilms.com. Excuse me, man. My throat is about done. That's FOURTH, fourth, all spelled out, watch, all spelled out, films, fourthwatchfilms.com. Head over there. Right there, you've got an open portal, no pun intended. It's a one-stop shop. You can get everything there. You've got our DVDs. You've also got access to the live stream if you want to, or not the live stream, but the on-demand. You can view it right there through Vimeo. We also have a partner ministry, Fourth Watch Radio, where we do weekly Bible teachings, getting into some of the harder topics, some of the issues. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, we mirror everything. We don't do a whole lot on our YouTube channel other than just mirroring. We mirror everything from the podcast over to YouTube. And so surprisingly, we've got, 35,000 subscribers. I don't know where that came from because we don't really do anything with YouTube, but everything that we put out is going to make it onto YouTube. We just, it was just kind of like it just happened that way. It's not our main focus, but now it kind of is growing. And so we're using it. But you can hear all of our podcasts, all of our teachings, years of archive shows getting into everything from reptilians, aliens, demon possession, sleep paralysis. I mean, goodness, the list goes on. I got a special I did on the Ouija board and the Ouija madness that struck California in the 30s, the reptilian tunnels in California. I mean, anyway, we got a lot of great content over there on the Justen Faull YouTube channel. If you just Google YouTube, search my name, but you got to spell it right.
With an E. Never live it down.
Yeah, and Wes and I are both on Facebook. We don't use Facebook like all the time, so like people don't get upset with us if we don't respond to your message or if we don't respond right away. And Chad Riley, he's on Facebook as well. He's got a group where people share stuff like this on Facebook. It's called Chad Riley Truth Seekers. If you're into the Facebook thing, I think that's pretty much it. fourthwatchfilms.com, and our email address. You can email us at fourthwatchfilms@gmail.com. That's probably the easiest one to remember. If you have questions about our movies or anything like that, you can reach us out there. Or if you have some information you want to share with us and want our opinion on it, we try to keep up with that as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, you guys, it has been incredible. You're welcome to hang out with me while I go through these Q drops here. YouTube just kicked 300 people off the stream at once. We were over 4,000, and in 1 second I looked, and now we're down to 3743. But we'll see them filter back in here. But seriously, it's been incredible having you guys on the show. I am so excited to have you come back because I think we've probably got 6 to 10 more shows that we can do with all of the information you guys have. Thank you very, very much for what you're doing. Thank you for your perspective, and thank you for your art. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Red. Keep up the good work, man.
Thanks, guys. All right, so folks, I think it's about time to hit up these Q posts. We've got lots of posts to go over, so let me go ahead and switch over to the right. All right, here we are. So we're going to go to the beginning of the day. First post of the day. Oh man, they're all out of order. I don't know how to look at them over here. Okay, so December 14th, we have this screen cap right here, and it says worth remembering. It's talking about the, I believe this is the flow chart for the FISAs and who got a FISA when it was approved, what they were trying to go after. And it says you must target, remove, and silence all those illegally targeted for FISA surveillance and UK Assist. UK Assist plus FISA surveillance included all upstream collection and tangent contacts, umbrella surveillance. Foreign target designators create leapfrog hops to isolated real targets. So what they do is when they want to get information on one particular person, they'll get a FISA warrant on someone next to them, and then they'll be able to get the information they want on the people they want. And we're told it is worth remembering. Now, this is actually fake. Q says this is fake. Sometimes silence is necessary in order to protect select public releases. B2, the stealth bomber, Bill Barr, public statements past week. Durham, public statements past week. Durham start, Q start, both on the exact same day. Did you learn that 4 FISAs last week regarding POTUS? We were told that a long time ago, guys, and now it actually came out. This is true. Is that the correct spelling on the bottom of the video now? Yes. Justin, his name is spelled J-U-S-T-N. I screwed it up in the card for the show. Cruz, FISA public soon. Watch, you guys, watch there be a FISA on Ted Cruz, and we're going to hear about it here very soon. Here, let me get my camera set. Oh, dang it. So, yes, we've been told before that there was a FISA on Ted Cruz, and I bet you that's going to be coming out here real soon. So, moving on to post 3668. When a B-2 bomber is no longer stealth, think public statements made last week. What must that signal? Planned coordinated attacks on Barr coming, smear campaign. Public opinion is important. Information warfare, a traitor's justice. Obviously, we're going to be seeing attacks come out against Bill Barr. Now, this kind of ties into what Drip Drop was saying earlier, because it's interesting that we've got Tom Fitton coming out against Bill Barr. I think that Tom is just frustrated, as many people are, but I do believe that there is a method to this madness. The fake thing Q mentioned was what he replied to by Nanan, not this image. Okay, thank you very much, OG Wiz. I appreciate that. And then, so yeah, we're going to be seeing attacks on Bill Barr. It makes sense because Bill Barr is going to be the one who is really bringing the heat on the deep state. Post 3669. Did we learn that there were 4 FISAs? Yes, we did. That was Manafort, Papadopoulos, Page, and Flynn. And dates of start will soon become important. So the dates that the FISAs began on each of these people will soon become important. Let's go ahead and... Did we get actual dates in the IG report? I believe we did, but I don't know where it is at this time. So We'll go back to this, post 3670, and it says, scope and size far greater than you can imagine. Let's go ahead and look at this tweet from Enoch. We get a lot of interesting people posting as anons. 20 minutes later, Laura Ingraham says farce on her show. Oh my goodness, I'm on in 20. Will say farce. Laura Ingraham is posting on the boards. That's great. Let's take a listen.
This is the Ingram Angle back in Washington tonight. Now, before we begin our analysis of this farce of an impeachment, I don't know, excuse me, I'm coughing because I can't believe it's still going on Capitol Hill. This is the Ingram Angle back in Washington
Laura
tonight.
Ingraham posting on 8ku, and that is incredible. You gotta love it. Scope and size far greater than you can imagine. You guys remember Watch the Water? Then we had the show with Jesse Waters covering our favorite Anon. And I think that this means that a lot more people are read into what's happening. These people in the mainstream media, in Hollywood, in DC, they are watching. They know what's going on. And Laura Ingraham is clearly on our team. Then we go to post 3671. When does the B2 drop the first bomb? Bill Barr fit into 8 spaces. Reconfig graphic. Knowledge is power. So yeah, remember here, we were trying to wonder what was in that empty space there. 8 spaces right up here. This was Whitaker, and then down here it's Bill Barr. And our favorite Anon told us in the earlier post that I just read that Bill Barr was the stealth bomber. So now we know what that is. Post 3672, what if there's another prosecutor outside of D.C. assigned by Sessions with the same mandate and authority? Obviously, that's Durham. And then we go up here to post 3673, the month day that Durham was initiated, the exact same day that our favorite Anon began posting. Month day that Q campaign was initiated, same day. How many coincidences before it's mathematically impossible? It was over before it began. You guys, this is obviously, it's us winning. So that's why I tend to give Bill Barr a little bit of leeway in terms of what's happening right now, because I know that these people are going to pay. I think that Tom Fitton is maybe not necessarily a Q person. I don't think that he's following along. It doesn't seem like he is, because he's got a different narrative than the information that I'm putting out, because I am following this, and this is the information that I trust. Post 3674, we've got that picture of Bill Durham, or excuse me, John Durham. No, what is his first name? Bill, is it Bill Durham? I can't remember. Yeah, U.S. Attorney Durham. What if other AG equivalents in foreign countries are also currently investigating use of their intel apparatus for illegal purposes? Was this chain of command followed? Hubbard, DOJ planes, Clinton Foundation. Guys, this is happening, all right? This is happening, and it's not just happening here in America. It's happening in the other countries where the coup co-conspirators were trying to help have Donald Trump removed from power. Places like Ukraine, I would say places like Italy, Australia. This is happening. This is happening. Sarah says, you judge Fitton from Q's point of view. Fitton does not know what you know. Yeah, I know that, and that was my point to Drip Drop. I'm not judging Tom Fitton at all. I love Tom Fitton. Somebody was saying that because of the way that I portray information on this channel, that I am somehow trying to obscure the truth because I didn't talk about the fact that Tom Fitton was getting upset at Bill Barr. I didn't think I need to talk about it because I know that Tom Fitton is going to be comfy in the end. He's going to see this all go down, and he's perhaps going to have something click. I like Tom Fitton. Yeah, Bull Durham. That's right, Bull Durham. 2 more drops. Denise, thank you for that. Let me go ahead and refresh the screen, guys. And here they are. That's right. Post 3675. Oh, sorry, guys. I got to go back over to the right. Post 3675. It's scary how good you guys are. Mary Cumis. Look at that. Where is this? Where is this located? Billiard Place. Mary Cumis. That is so cool, guys. More people are awake than ever before. And then, and this is only the beginning, we never thought she'd lose. What a meme right there. Jim Comey destitute on the street. Never thought she'd lose. Oh, guys, you know, I am totally okay with the way that things are progressing. I know that things are going to progress just fine. Tom Fitton does great work. I have no problem with Tom Fitton. Somebody else was positing that I wasn't being honest because I didn't talk about Tom Fitton being upset with Bill Barr. I think that Tom Fitton has a right to be upset because I don't think that he necessarily is following along in the same way that we are. Yes, Tom Fitton does follow methods. I would love to have Tom Fitton on my show. I love Tom Fitton's work. He is doing the real heavy lifting. He's doing a lot of the stuff that the DOJ and the FBI have not been willing to do. And I think that's because they've been fighting corruption at a massive scale. They have to do certain things before we can, I guess, get to the other things, you guys. It's a wheel, and it's turning, and it's a big, heavy wheel. But in the end, it's going to get all the way around, and the deep state is going to get squished. All right, guys. Well, I think that that's all that I have for you. Tom Fitton is doing great work. I love Tom Fitton. I have always been in favor of Tom Fitton. I got no problem with Tom Fitton, so I don't know why everybody is thinking that there's an issue, but I don't have a problem with Tom Fitton, and I think that Tom Fitton is going to continue to do great work. I'll say it out loud. I donated money to Judicial Watch this year. I love what Tom Fitton is doing. So Tom Fitton is a patriot. Tom Fitton is there's no problem with me and Tom Fitton. All right. All right, guys, that is all that I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. And thank you to the Fall Brothers and Fourth Watch Films. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Hey, don't forget to show up tomorrow at 6 p.m. for my interview with Tiffany Fitzhenry. All right, we'll talk to you then. Bye.